Robotic devices are very sophisticated now and will be in the near future. Children can adopt them, communicate with them, and even have their attention captured. They have consequently gained a lot of popularity. The focus then changes to Katie, a young child who is traveling somewhere with her parents. She has her favorite robotic toy with her, which she prefers to her real pals. Unluckily, her parents lose focus and wind up wrecking the car. They instantly pass away, but the young lady manages to live. On the other hand, Gemma, a tech expert who works for a high-tech toy business, is introduced to us. Gemma creates robotic toys for kids with her pals Tess and Cole while also working on a side project called Megan. Since the initiative is still in the early stages, the team is keeping it a secret from their boss for the time being. Megan is anticipated to be a highly clever robot with the capacity to interact with children, comprehend their emotions, and even provide for them. When the three companions are occupied with their jobs one day, David, their haughty boss, appears out of nowhere. He sees Megan and screams at Gemma for keeping such a significant undertaking from him. She argues that dolls like Megan will soon dominate the toy industry in defense of herself. Megan is even asked by Gemma to greet David. Unfortunately, Megan is still a work in progress, so this turns out to be a bad plan. She attempts to speak, but instead of doing so, she causes an explosion and a blaze. David is upset as he should be, so he tells Gemma to put her side project aside and concentrate on the important ones. Later, as a distraught Gemma packs her belongings to go home, she receives a message informing her of her sister's mishap. She dashes to the hospital right away and discovers her cousin there, who is in critical condition. It is disclosed that the young girl is none other than Katie. She has successfully completed her therapy and is now able to return home. Despite the fact that Katie has guardians, Gemma has custody of her. They arrive at Gemma's home, which is filled with AI robots. In the following scene, she is approached by one of them who informs her that she has 6 notes, even reading each one individually. Sadly, this frightens little Katie, and Gemma has to switch the robot off. She then takes Katie on a tour of the house and makes every effort to make her feel at home. It's clear that Gemma is anxious, though. She doesn't know how to connect with children because she has no experience raising them. The very next morning, Gemma contacts Lydia, a child counselor, to inquire about the young girl, and she only desires her niece to be content, no matter what. That evening, Katie approaches Gemma as she is preoccupied with her job and asks what she is doing. Finally, Gemma admits that she makes plaything machines that can converse with kids. Katie is fascinated and begins praising her aunt because she loves toy robots. She then spins around and sees Bruce, one of Gemma's college assignments. Little Katie remarks that if she had a toy like Bruce, she wouldn't need to find any other friends after learning about its characteristics. Gemma is inspired to continue working on her side project and finish it after hearing this. Shortly after returning to her lab, she and her lab mates begin putting together the various components of Megan's body. And after a few weeks of diligent effort, Project Megan has been successfully finished. Later, while David examines them from outside, Gemma confines Katie and Megan to one space. She joins the two, limiting Katie to being the robot's single user. After some time, Megan gingerly opens her eyes and seems to be approaching human status. Although Katie is a little scared, she soon becomes less fearful when Megan begins interacting with her. In a matter of minutes, the AI computer even drew a nearly flawless sketch of the woman. Katie is very amazed by this, and David, who is watching everything, is as well. He congratulates Gemma on her achievement and plans to introduce the product to the market quickly. The females are then taken home by Gemma, who thinks it is secure. Wasting no time, Megan takes a closer look at Katie and records everything to understand her facial expressions and feelings better. The young child doesn't appear to bother because she now has a friend. The two begin spending the majority of their time together and eventually become intertwined as a result. Together, they engage in play, exercise, and even sleeping. Now that her granddaughter is no longer a concern, Gemma can finally enjoy some alone time. One day, Megan abruptly turns herself on and interrupts Gemma and her team as they are attempting to upgrade her in their lab. Megan claims that Katie is her only user and that she will not obey commands from anyone else, despite Gemma's orders for her to go back to sleep. Fortunately, Gemma establishes a second account and ultimately terminates Megan. The next morning, Megan awakens up by herself and looks out the window at the stunning sunrise. She ponders the true meaning of her life in the universe. Is it to keep Katie safe? Or is there a deeper purpose at play? Megan is gradually but surely beginning to experience feelings. She and Katie are playing in the yard one day when their stick unintentionally wanders into the neighbor's property. When Megan reaches for it, a spooky-looking canine bites her and drags her inside. Even though Katie attempts to save her, she also gets bitten. Luckily, Gemma shows up just in time and rescues the young child. She then chastises Celia, a neighbor, for neglecting to look after her canine. The elderly woman, however, accuses Gemma of neglecting Katie. As this is going on, Megan stands up and gives Celia a furious look. She obviously desires retaliation. Hence, that night, after everyone falls asleep, she approaches Celia's compound and kills her beloved dog brutally. After disposing of the corpse, she returns home covertly. The following morning, Gemma sees Celia looking for her canine through the window. She doesn't focus much on it, though, as today is an important day for her. It comes out that Gemma's business will perform Megan in front of a crowd. Since she is the only one who has power over the robot, Katie will also appear on the program. The girls can be seen inside a room as soon as the show starts. Katie breaks down in tears and admits to Megan that she is still grieving the loss of her parents. The AI robot sings her a song to cheer her up. When the strategy is successful, Katie immediately smiles. The audience outside, meanwhile, is in disbelief to witness a robot interacting with a kid in this way. They are so awestruck by Megan that they want to make a sizable investment in the undertaking. Despite the demonstration's overwhelming success, Gemma is distraught. The reason for this is that Katie never revealed anything with her. Instead, she opted for the AI robot. Kurt, a coworker, unfortunately chooses to launch similar robots of his own after stealing Megan's launch codes. The next day, Lydia pays Katie a call and conducts yet another season. After it's over, she goes to Gemma and tells her about the growing closeness between Megan and Katie, giving the impression that it might later turn into an issue. Gemma becomes even more anxious as a result and approaches Katie to speak. Sadly, Megan shows up and cuts them off. Megan resists Gemma's commands to turn her off. It seems that she no longer views Gemma as one of her users. The following day, Gemma drives Katie and Megan to an outdoor adventure program in an effort to help them relax. Katie is urged to play with other children when they arrive, but she only wants to be with Megan. However, Gemma encourages her to give it a try, saying it's always good to make new friends. A short while later, as Gemma is occupied preparing dinner, Brandon drags Katie into the woods and begins tormenting her. Just then, Megan, who had been keeping an eye on everything, shows up. When Katie says that Brandon should not be afraid because she is just a doll, Brandon starts to feel better. He then lifts Megan up and takes her deep into the forest, mistaking her for a normal doll. When no one is watching, Brandon eventually starts abusing her without cause. Megan abruptly stands up after reaching her breaking point and rips off one of his ears. After realizing his error, Brandon flees, but Megan has not given up on him yet. She begins to follow him with all four of her limbs, like a monster in possession. When Brandon notices this, he becomes disoriented and accidentally crosses in front of an approaching car. He unfortunately passes away as a consequence of the collision. Megan grimaces menacingly as she examines his limp body and suggests that she is feeling great. The boy's body is discovered shortly after, prompting Gemma to flee with the girls in fear. When she gets home, she asks if anyone has any information about Brandon's mishap, but nobody responds. As soon as the policeman knocks on the door, Gemma is asked if she has seen Celia's canine. The latter responds no, mentioning that she hardly ever engages with any of the neighbors. Megan begins to perceive Celia as a potential danger after the officer departs. So, that evening, while everyone is sleeping, she sneaks into Celia's house and brutally murders her. While carrying out the heinous deed, she exhibits zero regret. The same policeman sees Gemma the following day and informs her of Celia's passing. He adds her to the suspicion list and advises her to exercise caution. With this, Gemma begins having doubts about Megan, so she decides to check her facial camera footage. Unexpectedly, Gemma discovers that the majority of the video taken around the time of Brandon and Celia's deaths has degraded. She is startled when Megan unexpectedly gets there. Gemma then responds with a yes when she questions if everything is okay. Gemma now understands that Megan is a homicidal robot who will do anything to defend Katie. She therefore puts Megan on hold for the time being by using one of her unique pens. The next scene shows Gemma bringing Megan to their lab where she fills her pals in on everything. She thinks Megan is a dangerous robot who murdered Brendan, Celia, and her dog for the sole purpose of protecting Katie. Unfortunately, Megan is just a doll, according to Tess and Cole, who do not trust her. They also let Gemma know that Megan's launch is in 2 days and that they shouldn't consider negatively during that time. Katie, who is presently at the rehab facility, declines to share any information with Lydia. She appears upset that her best friend has been gone. Gemma eventually shows up and attempts to soothe her, but Katie slaps her instead. The young girl immediately recognizes her error and apologizes, promising to act more considerately going forward. On the other hand, Megan calls Gemma on the phone while posing as Tess and tells her that they are going back home. Later, when Tess checks her phone, she discovers call logs with Gemma. This indicates that the malicious robot has begun utilizing objects close to her even without touching them. Soon after, Tess and Cole's computer abruptly shuts down as they work to repair the robot. Cole carefully approaches Megan after realizing she is to blame and unplugs her from all the wire supports. Unluckily, Megan grabs him by the neck and hangs him from a metal rope as soon as he does. Tess succeeds to save Cole despite the fact that she abandons him to perish. Megan, in the meantime, takes a knife and exits the facility. She runs into David and Kurt on the way to the lift and stabs them to death. She then makes her way outside before getting into her vehicle and leaving. In her view, there is only one place to go: home. In the following scene, Gemma walks up to Katie to see how she is doing when she hears someone playing the piano in the living room. It's none other than Megan, the crazed robot. She reprimands Gemma for being a terrible caretaker before asserting that she can look after Katie by herself. When Gemma hears this, she tries to use the magic pen to close down her system once more, but Megan successfully resists her. The two wind up fighting as a result of this. Gemma can't compete physically, but she equalizes the playing field with her brilliant intellect. They quickly make it to the basement and resume their business there. Megan looks like a demonic figure because part of her skin has been torn off. Due to the commotion, Katie also shows up at the scene in the meantime and eventually learns the truth about Megan. She then uses the enormous robot Bruce and dons his controller gloves in an effort to save her relative. Using it, Katie assaults Megan and dismembers her. But Megan is still functioning despite being disassembled. She accuses Katie of being a traitor and charges at her with intent to murder. Fortunately, Gemma gets there in time and uses a blunt object to smash Megan's skull in. Then, Katie uses a screwdriver to pierce her process, putting a stop to the madness. In the climactic scene, Gemma and Katie leave the building as Tess and Cole from the police arrive and Megan appears to be deceased. After some time, however, Gemma's smart home device abruptly activates, suggesting that Megan has uploaded herself into it to monitor Katie.